Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Jackson McCurry. Joining me tonight, he has been a friend for a few years now. We used to work together at Big Play, and now he is the co-host, or he is the host. Let me correct that right off the bat. He is the host of the Browns Blitz podcast, which is a fantastic Cleveland Browns podcast that if you haven't checked it out before, you definitely should. I've been a guest on there. He's also a contributor for Bet Jack, where he is a writer. And he is someone that I can call a friend. We always keep in touch periodically. I always send him a text, make sure he's doing okay. It's Rod Bluhm. Rod, how are you doing tonight, man? It's good to hear from you.
Hey, Jack. I'm doing great. It's good to talk to you. Really good. It's been a while since we've actually, talked versus just texting. So I'm really been looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. We had, I think last year or the year before, you had me on your podcast. I always wanted to return the favor. So really glad and excited that you were able to come on the Dogland podcast. Really appreciated it.
Absolutely.
So I had you on to talk Browns, but right before things get rolling, Rod, there was a trade involving a former Brown, and he's going to our arch rival, linebacker Joe Schobert. The Jacksonville Jaguars moved on from him after one season, and he's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And quite the reaction on Twitter. You got people that are saying, "Oh, this isn't going to do anything good for Pittsburgh," and then you had the people that absolutely love Schobert when he was with the Browns, saying that this is not a good trade for Cleveland. Like Pittsburgh just got better. Like for me, I liked Schobert when he was here, but I always tended to think he was a little bit overhyped by the fan base, and he's an average linebacker at best, in my opinion. He has regressed the last couple of seasons. Rod, what's your instant take on this, on Schobert going to the Steelers? Do you think this helps them, hurts them, or you think the Steelers are the same team as before?
I mean, I think Joe's a pretty good football player, but I'm not going to get all worried about the Steelers getting a whole lot better with this move. They obviously had a need at linebacker, so they went out and and did what they could to address it. So, I think there's bigger fish to fry than the Steelers in the division. I'm not going to be disrespectful. The Steelers, they seem to always find a way to get to the playoffs. So, until they really get knocked down a peg, that you still have to respect them. But, I'm not that worried about this move, Jack.
No, I'm really not either. I mean, they need to focus on that offensive line, if anything. And that's a bigger issue. And I figured they would try to swing a trade to bring in some kind of veteran help at the position, but they clearly think they're okay with what they got. And it's just going to be interesting to see what that team looks like come week one.
Yeah, we'll find out. I think we'll find out pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think Ben Roethlisberger's expressions on the field will tell the story as well. If he's not satisfied with that line, I feel like they will try and go make some kind of move to satisfy him, especially if this is the last season for him as well. The big news, I think, this week, obviously the Browns have a preseason game on Saturday, Rod. They play Jacksonville. We found out on Wednesday that Baker Mayfield wasn't going to play. And then Coach Stefanski said on Thursday, we're recording this Thursday night, that the majority of the starters will not play. And I think you could make a case that, I would say Chubb and Hunt won't play, Landry and Beckham won't play, the majority of the offensive line won't play, and the majority of the defense won't play. Rod, do you think this is a good move by the Browns? And I think you see this as a trend across the league where, especially now that they added another regular season game, that we won't see the starters for the bulk of the preseason. We might see a little bit of him. Are you okay with this as a fan, as someone who writes and covers the team? Like, are you cool with, hey, they don't need to play in the preseason, just get them ready for week one against Kansas City?
Yeah, I'm cool with it. I mean, you've got 3 preseason games, so there's time, and just watching the practices and just how, and I know it's practice, Jack, but how how good these guys all seem to look and act in in the practices. I feel like things are coming together for this team. I feel like they don't need a ton of action in the preseason. And like you mentioned, with the season being longer, 17 games, I just feel like the health of these guys is that much more important. And just saving the reps for these guys to be able to get through that 17 game schedule is more important than getting them reps in preseason games. I mean, risking injuries, and I would just, I'm good with it. And I think, I think the Browns are going to use this to try to figure out who's making the team, those last several spots. And I think that's what it should be used for. And, I think we'll probably see the starters in what game, game 2 or game 3, whatever it will be, whatever they use for the dress rehearsal, to play a little bit. And I think that's going to be it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I think the only people that probably aren't happy are going to be, the people who are going to the games, paying for the tickets, which I can understand. But for me, I'm happy.
Yeah, I am too. Like, you can't risk a guy getting hurt in a meaningless preseason game. I mean, it's happened time and time, not only for the Browns, but for teams across the league. Like, I mean, we already got guys banged up. Ward's banged up with, they're saying soreness. I feel like there's got to be more to it. Miles has a hamstring injury. Odell's coming off the ACL injury. Our safety position is banged up right now, which we'll get to in a little bit. I mean, there's minor, like, soft tissue injuries right now across the team, and you try to force a guy out there and it gets worse, and you're going to look really stupid as an organization to throw a guy out there, which I don't think they would if it was especially with these soft tissue injuries. They're being very vigilant of it. Like, I'm okay with it as well. You had the 3 preseason games, and then you also had the joint scrimmage with the Giants, I think, which is next week. Like, I feel like they're going to treat that maybe as a dress rehearsal just to see, hey, how is our offense stacking up against the Giants defense? Or how is our defense going to look against the Giants offense when we do 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 practices next week? I think it's when it's next week. But I feel like they're going to use that and utilize that. And you're seeing it across the league now. I mean, the Dolphins and the Bears had a joint scrimmage, joint practices this week. I think it's happening more across the league, and I feel like that's going to be a trend. And who knows, maybe within 5 years, Rod, we bump down to 2 preseason games, or maybe they just eliminate the preseason and do like a couple joint scrimmages with teams across the league. I think like that would be better, and you get these guys more rest and more time to prepare for the regular season and eventually the postseason.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, it's all a question of, the number of games and the money that the owners want to make, on ticket sales. So if they can come to an agreement, I mean, right now they're keeping it at 20 games pretty much. So if they can find another way to make money and reduce the games, then I think it would be smart to do that, because the preseason games are really getting to be just a way to determine the roster, essentially, and to give these guys a few reps to get ready for the season, because everybody's so conscious of the injuries that could happen.
Oh, absolutely. You think like Odell Beckham's prime example a couple years ago when he had that ankle injury against the Browns on Monday night, and then he never healed from that, and then he ended up I think he broke his ankle or he broke his leg later on in that season. Yeah. And that was unfortunate for the Giants at the time. And then I think that following year he got traded to Cleveland. So it's like an injury like that could have layers on layers of consequences for a franchise. So yeah, I just think the preseason is pretty much pointless at this point. Last week, the Hall of Fame game, I fell asleep within 5 minutes of turning it on. I think that just kind of tells you what
it was pretty
I think
unwatchable.
It really was.
It
was a joy watching Pittsburgh fumble on the opening drive for their second game in a row, including the Browns' playoff victory. But other than that, it was really a bore to watch.
Yeah, it was.
What's your thoughts on Grant Delpit? Now, he's one of these injuries that are nagging right now for the Browns. Obviously, he's coming off the Achilles injury last year, which made him miss his entire rookie season, and now he's dealing with a hamstring injury. The defensive backs coach said earlier this week that Delpit's only had 9 reps so far in training camp, which isn't very good for somebody that a lot of people had high hopes for, not only last year when he got drafted in the second round, but coming into this year. I mean, the talk was the Browns were going to run a lot of 3 safety sets on defense with Delpit, Ronnie Harrison, and John Johnson III. Now we're in a situation where Delpit hasn't gotten a lot of reps. He's dealing with another injury. I mean, it doesn't look hopeful for him that he'll be ready for week 1. What's your thoughts on the injuries and the fact that Delpit's really behind the 8 ball right now, even more so than he was coming into camp?
Well, that Achilles injury, we really didn't hear a whole heck of a lot about that coming into camp. So I really didn't know what to expect out of Grant Delpit. And I know he was at the mini camp, over the summer and that, but really didn't see him running a whole heck of a lot. So I really didn't know what he did. But I just kind of assumed that they were going to bring him along pretty slowly, and that kind of whatever the Browns got out of him early on, especially this season, was going to be a bonus. So I think that they just have to be smart, just like you were talking about with these guys. You'd be real cautious, get them healthy, and whatever they get out of Grant Delpit really this season for me is a bonus. I mean, because they went and got John Johnson, and at that point in time, I don't know if they even knew what the health of Grant Delpit was.
Right.
So and then to come in thinking we're going to have these 3 great safeties, excellent. But for me, if you got 2 of them playing, it's still great. So so if his Achilles is healed up and he's good there, which I guess he passed his physical, so it must be okay. Then let's just I don't know what's going on with all these hamstrings, but let's get the hamstring healed up, give him all the time he needs, and just work him in slowly. Because to me, he's still a rookie. I know he's got a year of watching and everything, but he's still a rookie as far as not having played yet. So for me, you treat him kind of the same way you treat JOK and all the other rookies. And you don't need to put a ton of pressure on these guys. Just kind of work them in when they're ready, slowly. And because this team has too much talent to be relying on a rookie and saying, hey, we need you to do this right now, week 1. So whatever we get out of him, great. I hope he can get healthy, and I hope we can see him, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel for him, because I know like him being on the sidelines for the last calendar year has got to been killing him inside. Just because,
yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, I don't know like his injury history prior to this, but you come in as a 2nd round pick, you're expected to be a contributor on the defense, then you tear your Achilles tendon your rookie year, you're sitting out this whole time, you work your butt off in rehab to get back, and then boom. And he was already on a limited restriction as it was, according to the article I read on Cleveland.com. Then he pulls a hamstring muscle, or I think it was, it just says a hamstring injury. I'm assuming it's a pull or something. Now he's got to sit on the sidelines again. My thing is right now, you're looking at the safety room. You have John Johnson, and then Delpit and Ronnie Harrison are both on the sidelines with hamstring injuries. So now you're counting on Javonte Moffitt, who has been in the system, so he's familiar with it, and he's actually been making some plays. And Richard LeCount, who's a 5th round pick, who I haven't heard a peep out of, but yet they've been splitting the reps at this, I'm assuming the strong safety position, because I think John Johnson's the free safety. And then Sheldrick Redwine's out with an ankle injury. So the safety room is already really thin as we're heading into our first preseason game. And I'm assuming John Johnson's not playing on Saturday. So I just wonder what the plan is at the safety position, not only for this game, but in the event that Harrison and Delpit aren't ready to go for week 1. Do they bring in another veteran, or do they groom Moffitt and LeCount to say, hey, you guys might not be ready for this, but you're going to be having to play some meaningful snaps week 1 against Kansas City. I know that's a month away, but you got to start really considering that possibility because these hamstring injury issues could linger.
Yeah, and I think during the brown and orange scrimmage, I think the guys said that they're kind of cross training MJ Stewart to play some safety too. So,
Okay.
I mean, I guess you need something when you got all these guys banged up. I mean, the safety looks so deep, but when you got 3 guys out, yeah, it's not looking quite so deep. But yeah, I mean, for me, Ronnie Harrison's the guy. Man, they really need to get him healthy. He's kind of the guy that I think everybody was counting on this season.
Absolutely.
So if they can get him healthy, I don't know if he'll be ready week 1 or not. I mean, that's the thing. You hear a hamstring injury, and it sounds like a month-long or longer thing, or a thing that can linger throughout a season. And you don't know the degree of all these things. Because like Miles, I think his is a hamstring too, but they're saying he's day to day. I don't know what kind of things these are, if they're tweaks or pulls or what they are, but man, a hamstring's not the kind of thing to mess around with, because it can be there the whole darn season if you're not careful.
Yeah, and I feel like they are being very careful, and like you see these guys are sitting out, and it's like it's okay, like
yeah,
we're a month away, like get healthy, but you feel like with the defense, Rod, all these new pieces and parts, like you would like to have everybody at full strength, but at the same time, like as long as they're full strength come September 12th against Kansas City, like that's the most important thing. I mean, yeah, they can't get the reps in practice, but as long as they know, which I'm sure they are studying the playbook hard and listening to everything Woods and his assistants are telling him, like, or telling them, like, I feel like they are going to be ready though come week 1.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not saying they won't be, but even if there are a few guys that aren't ready to go week 1, you still got to figure this defense is still going to be a heck of a lot better than it was last season, even starting out week 1.
Oh, without question. I don't think, like, as I went back and was listening to some of our old podcasts that me and Anthony did, and we were always like, they're the bend but don't break defense. But I mean, looking back now and watching some of the highlights, it was like, man, we trotted out that defense. Some guy like Robert Jackson and who else? Porter Gustin. Like, no offense to these guys, but these guys were playing some like meaningful snaps in playoff games, and it's like,
I mean, they did the best they can, but
yeah, they did the best they could. But it was like if we were at better strength, like if the guys that were out or hurt, like if they weren't hurt, like could we have beaten the Chiefs? I think so. And then it's like, man, what could have we done? But I mean, that's in the past. Looking forward towards the future, like you said, the defense looks very much better than it did last year on paper, and it'll be exciting to see these guys at full strength once they get to full strength.
That's right, definitely.
So one guy that really emerged last year and played like an all-pro was Wyatt Teller, and a lot of people have expected that maybe he does get a contract extension with the Browns, but Rod, and I don't know if you listened to his press conference at all, but his quotes and the things he was saying seemed to be pretty telling, not only to me, but to others, that it makes it sound like Wyatt Teller knows he's not in the future plans for the Browns. And he even acknowledged it when he said, we have such a good team. He goes, all the money that they have, it just can't go around to everybody. And, Wyatt Teller was the top rated offensive lineman last year, according to Pro Football Focus. And if he has another year like that, Rod, you look at some of the guards that are going to get paid. Quentin Nelson and Brandon Scherf are going to set the market. And Wyatt Teller's looking at a potential, if he has another all-pro caliber season, he's looking at something between 18 to 20 million per year, potentially. Like, the Browns already extended Nick Chubb. We assume they're going to extend Denzel Ward and Baker Mayfield sometime within the next calendar year. Unless they do some crazy number stuff that Andrew Berry and the front office do, I just can't see a scenario right now where Wyatt Teller is going to be a Cleveland Brown after this season. Would you agree, disagree? What's your thoughts on it all?
I would agree with you. And I don't know that a lot of people are going to agree with us, because I think that everybody sees Wyatt Teller as a very, very important piece of this team, and he is. I mean, he's an excellent player, but he played, how many games did he play last year, Jack? Did he play 13, or was it less than that? I think it was right around that, roughly.
Yeah, I think he played. I thought he played all of them, but he might have missed like 1 or 2 games because of COVID or something. But yeah,
he missed a couple games with an injury, I think, and then maybe one with COVID or something. So
you're right. He played 11 games, so he did miss
11.
5, actually.
Okay, so it was a few less than I thought. So he's played 11 games, and he was excellent. I mean, he's a great. I mean, he was a great player. He really emerged. But when you look at those dollars and what the Browns could do with that elsewhere, that's one factor. To think of what other players they could keep, or who else they could sign with that kind of money, and then you look at the fact that the Browns have Bill Callahan, and I did not see Wyatt Teller's press conference. I did listen to Bill Callahan's press conference. I think that was yesterday, and it was interesting because Wyatt Teller came up, and when people ask about Wyatt Teller, it was like Bill Callahan kind of said, it kind of sounded like him talk about Wyatt Teller, like Wyatt Teller was like different from the other guys on the line. Like he is more of a bulldozer kind of guy compared to the other guys, more of a power guy, almost like he didn't fit on the line, kind of, it almost seemed like he was saying that, and that Wyatt Teller had things to, Callahan's, the way Callahan talks is everybody has stuff to work on. Wyatt Teller's a great player, but he has some other things that he can learn and stuff to get better. So, but my point there is that Bill Callahan, when you have a guy like that, if Bill Callahan's going to be staying around, I'm pretty confident that the Browns can find a guy to replace Wyatt Teller that Bill Callahan can get to play pretty darn well at guard. I'm not saying he's going to be the best guard in the entire league like Wyatt Teller, or one of the top 3, but you got to figure that he's going to do a pretty darn good job. And there's guys on this roster that we haven't even really seen play yet. So the Browns may be pretty confident in somebody they already have on the roster to be able to take that spot too.
Yeah, immediately comes to mind is Michael Dunn. I mean, when he stepped in and played when Batonio was out, I mean, he shut down Cameron Hayward in the playoff game. Like that's the first image that comes to mind. Like, if Bill Callahan is as good as everybody thinks he is, and he's one of the greatest offensive line coaches ever, you're not going to pay Wyatt Teller when you have to pay Denzel Ward, Baker Mayfield, potentially maybe a Ronnie Harrison or a David Njoku as well. Like, guys are going to get paid. Teller's probably going to be the odd man out just because he's going to command a high salary. You have Michael Dunn, you have Drew Forbes, you have Blake Hance. I mean, you have James Hudson. You have guys potentially waiting in the wings that could replace Wyatt Teller. And then you don't have to make the decision to, hey, are we going to cut Treader or Batonio? We don't have to do that yet. Like, they still might move Treader because they're grooming Nick Harris to be the long-term center, but then they can move Wyatt Teller, slide in a Michael Dunn or a Drew Forbes, and then look to make those decisions on the other contract extensions they have to. So, like you said, if Bill Callahan is going to be around, which I feel like he is going to be around, there's no indications that he's going to hang it up just yet.
Right.
I feel confident enough to where we can let Wyatt Teller go, even though I feel like the fans who have grown to love Wyatt so far and his passion for Cleveland and the Browns, I think it's going to be better in the long run because Bill Callahan has shown he has the ability to develop these offensive lineman prospects.
Yeah, and even just on a regular team, even if you don't already have a good line, a very good line and a great offensive line coach, you would think that a guard would be easier to replace in general than a number one cornerback, obviously then a quarterback, and maybe even then. Well, I would think he would command. He's also going to command more money than everybody except the quarterback probably. So the way the equations work out, to me, it makes the most sense.
Yeah, without question. I mean, as much as I like Wyatt Teller, like, I understand we can't keep everybody. I know people will go out there and say the cap's a myth. We'll be able to rework deals and be able to keep everybody. Like, at some point, the bill will be due, and then you're going to end up like the New Orleans Saints, who had to gut the middle of their roster. Like, I don't think Andrew Berry wants to be like that. I think he wants to be able to pull guys in and out and just, keep the machine rolling. Like, I know everybody wants a Super Bowl bad and they just want to go all in, but like, I think Barry and Stefanski and Deep Podesta have a plan to where this is going to be a potential like 7 to 10 year window of just consistent winning football. And I would rather take that and have chances at multiple Super Bowls. Yes, I'd love one, but I'd also love a chance to win 3 or 4 and build a dynasty.
Yeah, I think they're trying to build it to where they can just kind of keep it rolling. And I mean, and that's the idea. Try to be competitive every season. I mean, it's obviously it's really hard to do because every team's going to have a down year every now and then. But I think that's their goal, is to try to be competitive every season. And if you can do that and field a very competitive team every year, it really increases your chances versus just rolling the dice once every 5 years on a bunch of free agents.
Without question. I mean, I feel like, they've went out and spent big money in free agency. I don't think they want to do that after. They might do it one more time next year, but I feel like they want to focus on building through the draft and then be able to, take Wyatt Teller, for instance, let him walk, get comp picks, continue to build through the draft, and just keep the machine rolling.
Right.
So I like what they've done so far. I think the emphasis on adding talent in free agency will stop. They'll continue to look to make moves in trades and the draft. And I feel like that's how they're going to continue to build their roster, which I think is a smart way to go about things.
Well, the free agents they sign will be kind of like some of the latter free agents they signed this year.
Yeah, like
the 1 year deals.
McKinley's. Yeah.
Yeah, the 1 year deals for kind of low dollars.
Yep.
So just a full spots, and the kind of deals where you really can't lose.
Absolutely. So Rod, now that we know that the majority of the starters are going to play Saturday against Jacksonville, looking at the roster, who are some of the guys that you are excited to see play on Saturday? Like, is there specific players? Is there position groups? Like, what are you going to be watching, or who are you going to be watching come Saturday?
Yeah, I started making a list, Jack, and I wrote a ton of names and positions down. It kind of comes down to everybody, I guess. But one guy I want to see who used to be a secret, and I think everybody kind of wants to see him play now, is Curtis Weaver, to see what he's got.
That's one of my guys too.
Yeah, so is he the real deal or isn't he? If he looks good, he's got a great shot to make the team. If he doesn't, he's not going to be here. So. He's a guy who's playing for a job. I have no idea what he's going to look like. But I think really most of the guys we're going to see on defense, I'm kind of excited to see play. Really all of the defensive tackles who are fighting for a job. I don't know who all is going to be playing and who's not. I'm hoping that we'll see, Marvin Wilson and Tommy Togiai and all these guys out there at some point, and that we'll know who's out there and that they'll point them out to us and everything. I'm not going to have all the numbers memorized just yet, but and then some of the DBs, it'll just be good to see, who's playing well, who's not. Kind of excited to see. I'm hoping that we get to see an extended, play by James Hudson. I really like to see Drew Forbes play because we've been hearing about him for what, 3 to 5 years, it seems like, and we've never seen him play.
Yeah, he was like the last Dorsey pick. So this was 2 years ago, and then last
Yeah.
year he opted out. Like, finally get to see what I think Sports Illustrated dubbed him Player X. We're finally going to see Player X and see, is he worth all this hype? Because last year the OBR said they reported this, through their insider stuff, that Callahan really loved Teller and Forbes. So
Hmm.
Forbes could have been what Wyatt Teller was, because Callahan was high on him. And then obviously he opted out because of COVID, which I don't think anybody could
Yeah.
fault him for. But yeah, I'm really anxious to see what Drew Forbes can bring and how he fits in the zone blocking scheme for the offensive lineman.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping both of those guys play quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'll pull a name out here only because I saw this a while back. The Browns have tight end Kyle Markway. They signed him to a 2-year deal, and I know he's not making the 53-man roster, but I'm just kind of curious what they saw in this kid, and maybe he's a guy who will make the practice squad. So don't know. He's a guy who I'll probably notice, and nobody else will probably know who he is. So and maybe we'll see JoJo Natson, see if he's see what he looks like, if he's got his speed or not, all back. And then I wrote down John Kelly only because he scored like 4 touchdowns in practice one day.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of interested in seeing Kyle Lauletta play too a little bit. Not that he's the future of the Browns or anything, but a few people liked him coming out of college, so it'd be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, it was really interesting this week, Rod. They worked out a couple quarterbacks. Chad Kelly, Jordan Tamu, I think is his last name. And and then there was speculation is a Case Keenum trade coming. Everybody's kind of looking at Indianapolis because the Carson Wentz situation, and but the reports are that they're not interested in trading for a quarterback. Wentz is going to be good, but like Case Keenum expendable? Is there a team looking for him in a trade? Are the Browns okay with Lauletta being the backup? And then do they bring in Kelly, or do they bring in somebody else to be like the practice squad quarterback? So that's something interesting to watch. Lauletta, be interesting to see how he is, because he's been in the system now for about a year. So be interesting to see how he performs, and does it make Keenum expendable? So yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch.
It kind of concerned me if they traded Case Keenum.
What? Yeah, I mean, I had this discussion with a coworker, but then at the same time, I'm thinking, if we free up that $6 million that he's due, that's $6 million that you can use towards the Baker extension, the Ward extension. If Austin Hooper doesn't pan out, you use that money to pay David Njoku. Like, I'm thinking, like, okay, we free up that money. How do we utilize it? Do we utilize it towards an extension? Do we utilize it towards bringing somebody in? Like, I understand, like, you want to have a solid backup, but
I like that insurance.
Yeah.
I just like that insurance, especially in Cleveland.
I also look at it like this, though, Rod. I forget who said it. It was a reference to the Colts when Peyton Manning got all the first team reps, and somebody goes, well, why not give so-and-so a shot? And they were like, well, if 18 goes down, the season's over. And my thinking is, and I know Keenum's had a solid track record of, he took the Vikings to the NFC Championship. If 6 goes down, I hate to say it, but the Browns season would be over.
I think it would depend on the injury, though.
True.
It depends how long he would be out. If Baker goes down for 4 to 6 weeks, for example, and obviously we don't want any of this to happen, but if Baker goes down for 4 to 6 weeks, it can make a big difference who's out there playing, as far as the QB. But you need somebody reliable. But I think the Browns' offense is a little bit different from a lot of other offenses just because of the running game.
Very true. Very true.
So you don't need a marquee guy out there. But I still think I'd rather have somebody like Case Keenum out there than somebody who really hasn't played hasn't played it down in the NFL. I think it could make a big difference. Probably in the huddle mostly.
Yeah,
So
I get it from that aspect as well.
But we'll see. And you know what?
Yeah.
One thing is different right now, Jack, that I have to say is we like to talk Browns on our podcasts, and things for me have changed from kind of before, maybe halfway through last season, before halfway through last season to now. And that's that I kind of trust everything the Browns do now. There's not a whole lot of second guessing going on my part.
Oh,
So,
without question.
Yeah. So if they decide that Kyle Lauletta or Chad Kelly or somebody else is a suitable backup, I'm going to say, all right, that works for me.
Right. Like, they haven't done anything yet to make us really, like, just a head scratcher. Like, are you guys sure about this? Like,
yeah.
I mean, last year was crazy. The coaching staff goes down. Part of the line goes down. The secondary goes down with COVID, and they still won. They won a playoff game, and it was like, I don't know what they're doing in there, but it's working now.
Yeah.
And that was after 20 years of really questioning some of the decisions they made. But yeah, like you said, there's no reason to doubt them yet.
That's right.
I will say, a couple of players that I want to see Saturday. I really hope we see like Donovan Peoples-Jones make some kind of play in a somewhat game setting. I know it's preseason, but you've seen him make all these big plays in camp. Like, if he does it in a game, then it's kind of like, okay, now I'm really starting to believe this kid. I believe in him now just because I liked what I saw in the limited amount of flashes he made at Michigan, because Harbaugh and Shea Patterson really didn't get to expose the talent that was Donovan Peoples-Jones, which was a good thing because we got him in the 6th round of the draft. But looking forward to seeing him also on offense, Demetric Felton, just because I'm anxious to see what they got planned for him, because I think he's going to be the 3rd running back behind Chubb and Hunt. It's an interesting battle with him and Dearness Johnson for sure. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned Weaver. This kid really hasn't been talked about a lot when it comes to the D tackle room, but Jordan Elliott, he said he lost 20 pounds. I'm anxious to see what he looks like, because a lot of people writing him off when you look at this D tackle room, just because we have Togiai and Marvin Wilson and Malik McDowell. I'm actually hoping Malik McDowell plays because I want to see what he's got, because he's been out of football for a while. And then the rookies, obviously. I don't know what JOK's how much he's going to play. I don't know how much Newsom's going to play, but it's their pro debuts officially, so I'm anxious to see what they're going to bring, even in a preseason game.
I expect Jordan Elliott to take a step forward this season.
I really hope so.
I think he'll be we'll have to see who makes the team first, but I think he's going to make the team. And I think he'll play very well, but I think they're going to have a very nice, solid rotation, at that D tackle spot. And I think he's going to contribute, very well.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see how that shakes out, because I don't know if they're going to keep 5. Are they going to keep 4? Could they keep even 6? Because you have so much depth at that defensive tackle position and a lot of unknowns. Like, Rod, it wouldn't shock me because there's names out there still on the free agent market, Geno Atkins being the most notable. Do they bring in another D tackle if they're not satisfied with how the room looks after a preseason game? Because cutdowns also start after this game. They have to cut 5 players to trim it down to 85. So if they're not satisfied with the D tackle room, do they cut a few of them and bring in a veteran to try to boost up that position room?
Well, if these guys aren't, if they're not ready to really bring it in this game because of the competition, then yeah, it's probably time to cut them loose. So anybody that doesn't really show up for this game, I would expect them to be on the street. When are the cuts? Sunday, I believe.
They have to make them by
Tuesday, aren't they?
Yeah, by Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
It's only 5, but I mean, they could do a lot of shuffling and be like, hey, we'll move 7 guys out, and then we'll sign 2 guys in or something. I mean, I'm anxious to see how it because I'm sure they already got like the 5 in mind, but they're holding out to see, hey, let's see what these guys do in a game.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that. I mean, the first 5 cuts shouldn't be that tough. I wouldn't think.
You wouldn't think, but we always could get a surprise.
Oh, we could. Yeah. You never know.
So, Rod, as we ramp things up, over the years, we've had guys in the preseason, in training camp that have just, wowed the fan base, and everybody thinks, oh, they're going to make the roster. And then they ultimately don't make the roster. And they make big plays or have really strong flashes in games or in practice, like at training camp. But I threw this out to you just because I wanted to do something a little fun at the end of the pod. But who are some of your favorite all-time Browns preseason players? Like guys that flashed out to you and you thought, man, these guys are going to be impact players in the NFL someday.
Well, I got to tell you, Jack, this really wasn't that easy for me because I had to think back.
Yeah.
Ways I'm thinking preseason. And the first guy on my list really didn't flash that much, but he's a guy who everybody thought was going to make the team, I think, because of the exposure he got, and that was Devin Cajuste from when, because of all the film he got on Hard Knocks. I think everybody fell in love with the guy, and nobody realized that he wasn't going to make the team. And I don't even know if he landed anywhere, after that. So
I never heard from him again.
No, I don't even think nobody picked him up or anything. So, him and I'm trying to remember who else, he got cut, and then it was between 2 other guys. Nate Orchard was one guy, and then somebody else to make the team, and Nate got cut. So I wrote down Nate, but he's not really a preseason guy. So I'll move on from that. And one guy who a lot of people liked was, and I don't remember if the Browns cut him or traded him, and that's Jalen Strong. When the Browns signed him.
Yeah, I remember them now.
And I'll be honest, I don't know what he did in preseason, but I had him written down to have a very nice season with the Browns. And I don't know. I think they cut him, actually.
Yeah, I think they ended up cutting him. I think it was one of those things where he did have a strong camp, and then I think they brought in Braxton Miller or somebody then, and it was kind of
okay.
This was 2019. Yeah, this was because we had Beckham and Landry and Higgins, and he did have a strong camp, but it was just a numbers game.
It wasn't enough. Yeah. And the last guy who everybody still probably wants to come back, that's Damon Sheehy-Giuseppe.
Yes.
So that's my list.
Okay. My list, James Davis is the top of mine. I don't know if you remember him. He was at Clemson with CJ Spiller. The Browns drafted him late. I think it was 2009. And he had a 70-yard touchdown run in the preseason. And I just remember him thinking him and Jamal Lewis were going to be this 1-2 punch because Jamal Lewis was still on the team. And they were just going to run over defenses, especially the AFC North defenses. And I was convinced of it. And then I don't think he lasted 1 year, and I don't remember him playing all that much for the Browns. They ended up cutting him. But it was just one of those things. I was so convinced that he was going to be a stud in this league. So that's one for me. Damon Sheehy-Giuseppe was another one because of the story, and then he had that punt return touchdown, and I was so sure he was going to make the team. He was going to be the next Josh Cribbs or Eric Metcalf for us in terms of the return game, and he ultimately didn't make the team. And then I'm trying to think. There was a quarterback.
That's what I was thinking. I couldn't remember, but I'm there's got to be quarterbacks that look good in the preseason.
Yeah,
because we've seen so many.
Yeah, we've seen so many. There is. I'm trying to think of the one, and I just can't put it. Been trying to think of it all afternoon. I'm drawing a blank now. But yeah, I got the 2, and then I can't think of another one now. But James Davis came right away to me just because, and I think I played with him on Madden, and I turned him into a superstar running back.
How.
Yeah.
I was going to say, your memory is better than mine if you remember that. Which it probably is anyways, but yeah.
I do have another wide receiver, though. Cindric Steptoe. He was 07 draft pick. I think he made some big plays for with Brady Quinn in the preseason in 07. I seem to
I remember him.
Yeah.
He
wore number 12.
No,
he made the team. He played on the Browns for a couple seasons.
I thought so, yeah.
So he actually did make the team, but he just never did anything in the league. But I was convinced he was going to do something because he made flashes in preseason. Brady Quinn was throwing him the football. He would make plays because when Brady was the third string quarterback behind Fry and Anderson. So I was convinced he was going to be a playmaker too behind, we had Edwards and Jarrett Vicious at the time. Josh Cribbs was coming on as a receiver as well as the returner, but yeah. And then Josh Lenz. There's another one from the mid 2010s. He was a guy that was catching everything in preseason, and everybody was convinced he was going to make the team. And I don't remember if it was the Hoyer year or the McCown year, but he had a solid camp, and everybody assumed he was going to make the team, and he just didn't make the team. And then I don't think he ever played in the league.
People talk about quarterbacks with the Browns, but the Browns have had a lot, just a ton of wide receivers who haven't done anything. And then, like you said, there have been so many camps where it seemed like a guy played well enough to make the team and he got cut. And there's always been questions about, did the Browns keep the right guys at wide receiver?
Yeah. Well, you got to think 5 years ago, Rod, our best wide receiver was Terrell Pryor. Now we have a wide receiver room that's so deep that you have guys like Jamarcus Bradley and JoJo Natson, Ryan Switzer that could go and latch on to another roster.
Yeah.
And the Browns are going to probably going to have to end up cutting them unless they can get a trade for a 7th round pick. And because we have Beckham, Landry, Higgins, Schwartz, Kadero Hodge, we have a DP and Donovan Peoples-Jones. We have
6 guys.
Yeah, those 6 guys are going to make the roster. And you have guys on the outside looking in. Maybe we can sneak Jamarcus Bradley onto the practice squad. But I feel like those guys could go latch on elsewhere on an NFL roster because they could be beneficial in special teams in the return game. It's a shame that but it's a shame that we're going to have to cut guys, but it's also a good thing because it just shows that the roster is talented and we have depth now.
Yeah, and you have confidence in Andrew Berry to be able to go and find other guys too. You're not worried that, this is all we're going to get.
Right.
So,
yeah, without question.
It's just a different feeling.
Well, Rod, this has been a great conversation. It's been great to get you on here and talk some Browns football. It's great to talk to you in general. You've always been a good friend, going back to the big play days. And anytime you want to come on and talk Browns football, you're more than welcome to.
I appreciate it, Jack. Yeah, I appreciate you keeping in touch, over the past couple of years. I've always enjoyed your writing and everything you've done and all that. So I appreciate this conversation, and I'll look forward to the next time we do it.
Absolutely. Go ahead and plug the Browns Blitz, your Twitter, and what you're up to these days.
Well, you can find me at CleeRodB on Twitter, and the podcast is the Browns Blitz. That's at the Browns Blitz on Twitter, and we usually record weekly, and I'm writing for Jack Casinos. There's a link on my Twitter account, so I write when I can. It's not as often as I would like, but I'm hoping as the season starts, it'll be a little bit more often. And I'll be tweeting out those articles as I write them.
Excellent. I can't wait to read them, man.
Thanks a lot, Jack.
As for me, you guys can follow me on Twitter at JackMcCurry08. You can follow the podcast at The Dogland on Facebook and Twitter, and also check out thedogland.com. And until next time, which will probably be this weekend after the game, we'll get on here and do a recap episode. Until next time, Go Browns.